Hi everyone, welcome to the Test Automation channel. I'm Gokul, and in this video, we are going to focus on understanding the differences between Selenium WebDriver and Cypress IO. So let's get started. Let us look at some of the concepts and categories based on which we are going to compare Selenium and see the differences between WebDriver and Cypress. We are going to go through the following points. First one being features, architecture, tools and frameworks which are built on top, tools and frameworks which can be integrated with, similar tools, test design and execution, CI integration, and other details. So let's get started. We all know that Selenium WebDriver is a UI test automation framework, which comes as part of Selenium suite of tools, which is most popular among the test automation frameworks. Whereas Cypress is a JavaScript end-to-end test automation testing framework. To start with features, we have we have WebDriver being open source and free. This is one of the huge advantage for any project and team to start using Selenium WebDriver. Cypress is also an open source tool, but it also has a commercial version of software where it provides Cypress dashboard based on the number of usage. We also have multiple platforms and programming languages support where WebDriver supports Windows, Mac, Linux, and so on and so forth. And programming, coming to the programming languages supports, it supports programming languages like Java, Python, C Sharp, Ruby, Perl, JavaScript, Kotlin, and so on and so forth. Whereas in case of Cypress, Cypress essentially works on JavaScript, but you can also write your test scripts using TypeScript, CoffeeScript, and ClojureScript. But eventually, internally, the code gets translated into JavaScript code itself when it interacts with the browsers. Coming to the cross-browser testing part, one of the most advantages of using WebDriver is that it supports multiple browsers like Chrome and Firefox, IE, Opera, Safari, and it also has a specific driver called as HTML unit driver, which acts as a ghost driver to run your test cases in headless mode. In case of Cypress, Cypress team has started to support only Chrome initially, but later now in the recent releases they have started supporting Firefox and Edge. Of course, Electron browser is a lighter version of Chromium is also supported by Cypress. In terms of API, we have Selenium WebDriver API, which is very simple. When a new guy or a newbie who wanted to start working with WebDriver automation can easily go through the API, understand and start working on WebDriver. Similar is the case of Cypress. Apart from the simple API, we have different capabilities from Cypress like time traveling ability and easy debugging and automatic waiting. In terms of when we talk about time traveling, we have Cypress that takes snapshots as your test runs, hover over the commands in the command log to see exactly what happened at each step. In case of debugging ability, we can use something called as a debugger or a debug method with the help of developers tool when you are trying to debug your test cases. Cypress provides automatic waiting capability. You need not write explicit wait, though based on requirement, you can use something called a cy.wait or other element-specific wait methods for specifying the timeouts. But Cypress provides automatic waiting capability. In terms of synchronization, WebDriver, you need to explicitly use something called as uh, implicit wait, explicit wait, and fluent wait, etc. WebDriver has a very huge community. It has been in the test automation industry for some time now, and a lot of resources available if you have any issues with the specific version of WebDriver that is being used. In case of Cypress, it is a growing community, and one very nice feature of Cypress is that you can create videos of it creates videos of every test run. For execution part, we can use some other tool I can say called a Selenium Grid for running your test cases in a remote server, be it in a container or a VM, or running your tests in parallel. You can see the tests being happening in the remote server. And when it comes to Cypress, we have Cypress Test Runner that comes as a free version in Cypress, And we also have something called as Cypress dashboard that can be used if you want to run your test cases in parallel across multiple machines. In terms of architecture, when we talk about architecture, we have WebDriver test. WebDriver mainly operates outside the browser and executes the remote commands across the networks. So, as we all know, we have Selenium language bindings, which interact using JSON wire protocol, which acts as a like a broker between for transferring the data between client and server. JSON wire protocol essentially is a REST API that transfers the information between the browser driver and each and every command that hits the browser driver, which is going to be executed in the respective browser, and in response, it is going to get a HTTP response. In terms of architecture, when we talk about architecture with regards to Cypress, Cypress executes inside the browser. So that is behind Cypress, there is something called as a node server process that runs, and Cypress and node process constantly communicate and synchronize to perform actions on your browser. So let's look at other categories. We talk coming to tools and frameworks which are built on top of WebDriver. We have the most popular ones. There, of course, there are many other tools that are being built on top of Selenium API, but most popular ones being Catalan Studio and Test Project. In case of Cypress, currently we don't have any other tools that are using the Cypress API because Cypress team has its own architecture and uh, framework that they work on. In terms of tools and frameworks that can be integrated with Selenium. We have Cucumber, JBehave, which provide the behavior-driven aspect of usage by writing your features or story files. Uh, and we also have some other tools called as Test Complete and Parasoft that have integrated WebDriver within it. In terms of Cypress, if you wanted to get the flavor of BDD, you can integrate Cypress with Cucumber and write your feature files and run the test cases. Coming to the similar tools and frameworks that are available for which are similar to that of WebDriver. So many people would have heard about UFT Unified Functional Testing Tool, which is a HP product. Prior to WebDriver, this was one of the most popular tool because it helps us automating both Windows-based and web-based applications. And after that, we have Relational Functional Tester, which is an IBM product, and we also have Sahi tool that is being used also earlier. But of course, WebDriver is a popular choice from the recent years. We with regards to similar tools and frameworks for Cypress IO, we have WebDriver IO, which is again it's a JavaScript kind of flavor that is provided in terms of automation. And we also have Puppeteer, which is from Google, and Playwright, which is from Microsoft. When we talk about test design, so we think about what is the programming language that we use. So in terms of programming language, Cypress provides the flexibility of using multiple programming languages, whereas in case of Cypress we essentially use JavaScript. Of course we can use like TypeScript and CoffeeScript as well, but internally which those get translated into JavaScript when it interacts with the browser. In terms of object identification, we have different locators that are available like id name, class name, xpath, xpath, css selector, so on and so forth. Whereas in case of Cypress, essentially supports css by built-in, but you can also use Cypress by writing xpath for your elements using an external plugin. In terms of usage of test data, or reading the test data, or writing the test data, you need to use external libraries, something called as Apache Py for reading your data from Excel files or CSV files. Whereas in case of Cypress IO, it provides a built-in feature, something called as fixtures, where we store the test data in a JSON file using a simple method called cy.fixtures, and providing the file name, you can read the data from the JSON files and use it in your test cases. When we talk about the design patterns that are available for Cypress, in the most popular being in Java, that are page object model and page factory. So it's very popular. Page object model is a very popular design pattern that is used to create the object repository for your web elements, and also maintaining your reusable methods for that. So the advantage of using page object model is that it reduces the code duplication and improves the test maintenance. In case of page factory, it's an optimized way of creating your object repository in page object model concept. And in terms of Cypress, there is no, of course, you can write your page object model design pattern in Cypress as well, although it is not recommended by the Cypress team itself. You can, instead, they recommend to use common code by writing the reusable functions or methods in commands.js file. So when we talk about test execution aspect, in case of Selenium WebDriver, if you want to do grouping of your test cases or running a specific test cases before every test, or maintaining your test reports or creating your test reports and running the test in parallel, we can make use of unit testing frameworks like TestNG and JUnit. And for behavior-driven frame aspect, we can use Cucumber and JBehave. In terms of Cypress IO, we can Cypress IO within itself has a support for Mocha. You can also integrate with Jest framework as well. Of course, you can also integrate Cypress with Cucumber and use it as for building your features. In terms of running your test cases in remote, we can make use of Selenium Grid. We can set up the Selenium Grid in a VM, or a VM, or in your local machine, or in a Docker or Docker Compose, using Docker or Docker Compose, and also Kubernetes as well. Of course, Cypress doesn't have that ability of, as of now, it doesn't have an ability of maintaining or setting up a grid kind of concept in terms of running your test cases in remote, but you can run your test cases across different virtual machines and make use of something called as Cypress test. I mean, if you run your test cases in local, you can make use of test runner, and if you want to run your test cases across multiple virtual machines, you can make use of Cypress dashboard. And for running your test cases in parallel, you can use something called as a parallel flag that helps us in running your test cases in parallel. So let's get into the next category. So another important thing that I would like to discuss is built-in retry ability. So I'd like to talk about this like category first with Cypress, because it's a very core feature of Cypress. It assists in testing dynamic web application is its retry ability. And one important thing is that you need to notice that retry ability doesn't work for every command. So it essentially works for get, find, and another method, that is contains method. It doesn't work for all the methods, but it's essential because when you are trying, the main concept of using retrying or retrying to find your element is to find an element in the web page, right? So it essentially works on finding an element. Most of them wouldn't have noticed it, but it is working internally in the background. Whereas Cypress supports built-in retriability, WebDriver doesn't support retriability. When in terms of designing your test case, the most important thing is writing the right assertions are very important for your test cases, right? So in terms of assertions, you need to use an external like unit testing framework called as TestNG and JUnit. Whereas in case of Cypress, you need to use chai library for writing your like single element assertions, or if you want to do multiple chain assertions, you can make use of chai library. In terms of API automation support, so WebDriver is mainly a web UI automation framework. So you should use some other external library called as Rest Assured, or other tools like SOAP UI and Postman for API automation. Whereas in case of Cypress, it supports API automation by you can make use of request, and you can try to like hit a particular endpoint or URL and do the necessary assertions. Coming to the category regarding reporting, so WebDriver doesn't have an inbuilt support for reporting, whereas you can use external libraries called Extend Report, Cucumber, and Allure for generating your test reports. In case of Cypress, it also doesn't have built-in support for reporting, but you can make use of dependencies from Mocha or Mochasm for generating the reports. Mochasm has also a custom HTML report that you can make use of. When we talk about test automation, is the most important thing is to the ability to run your test suite, which consists of hundreds and hundreds of test cases using a CI tool, right? So the CI integration part of it, we can the most popular choice being in terms of both the tools is using Jenkins and Circle CI. Whereas in case of if you want to run your test cases in parallel, you can obviously, as I mentioned before, we can use other libraries like TestNG or JUnit and trigger your test cases in parallel, and also run your test cases in a remote machine or remote server using Selenium Grid in case of WebDriver. Whereas Cypress dashboard has the ability of maintaining the test results to run your test cases in parallel. So coming to another like unconventional topic, when we talk about how to do non-functional testing, we have when we see that whether WebDriver supports performance testing, yes, it does support, but you need to make sure that it is not obviously recommended practice to use WebDriver for your performance test. Obviously, the better choice will be using JMeter alone. So, but there is a scope that you can use JMeter and Selenium WebDriver together to ensure or test your performance of your application. Whereas Cypress doesn't support performance testing or non-functional testing. So coming to the next category, we want to discuss. I want to discuss about native event support. WebDriver supports native events, whereas Cypress team has mentioned in the recent one of their blogs saying that they currently don't support native events, but in future they do have plans to provide support for native events. Ease of use, I think both of the frameworks are really, I mean, very simple in terms of architecture and use, and we can easily start using both of the frameworks. Obviously, Cypress has very, I mean, crisp and precise methods that we can use for in terms of writing code or developing code base or developing frameworks. Cypress is very easy. So when we talk about automation, we also focus on something called as execution speed, right? So WebDriver is fast, but whereas Cypress, I've worked on. I mean, I can take an example of the experience that I have. Uh, we have Cypress tests run really, really fast when compared with WebDriver. Obviously, in this particular category, I see that Cypress is clearly a winner in terms of execution speed. So, coming to the catches that can be taken into consideration or in terms of both the tools. And I'll start with Cypress. Cypress doesn't support multiple windows and doesn't support iframes. So in case if you wanted to, if your application has iframes within it, you need to use some external plugin called as Cypress iframe plugin. Using that plugin, you can handle the elements that are present inside your iframe. Whereas WebDriver supports switching to the iframe within by default, and it also manages multiple windows by just switching to the window or a tab for that matter. Whereas in case of Cypress, it doesn't works fine with multiple windows. It runs only a single window, but you can like manipulate the DOM so that the new window opens in the same window, and because it runs in browser, so the Cypress IO team says that there is no chance of like interacting with multiple windows using Cypress. Another important thing is that Cypress IO supports only same origin websites in a particular test. You can't open Google.com and Yahoo.com in the same test, whereas WebDriver doesn't have any restriction in terms of origin or domain in the particular test. So let's also see what is the future. So currently we have at the time of making of this video, we have Selenium 4.4 that is being released by the Selenium team, and also we have a very good documentation that has been provided by Selenium team here. In terms of features that have been released for Selenium 4.0, we have W3 standard that is being added. We also have relative locators support and improved UI for Selenium Grid, and also new IDE or CLI runner that is being supported. And we also have better window and tab management that is being done with from Selenium 4. In terms of features that are being used, I mean, new features that have been released with Cypress IO since Cypress 4.0 version, we see that support for multiple browsers like Firefox and Edge has been provided by Cypress team. And also, we also have errors that are being, that are displayed in the test runner. Now, since the latest release, we can now see or view and highlight the line and column in which the particular test script has failed. That is one feature that has been released by the Cypress team. So finally, we are going to see the Google Trends in terms of both the tools. We see that clearly the blue line represents the Selenium WebDriver, and the red line mentions the Cypress IO. Clearly, Selenium is a popular tool when compared with Cypress, but you never know what happens, and Cypress team really aggressively works on providing new updates to the framework. So for that matter, Cypress or any other tool can compete with Selenium in the future. So that's it for this video. And thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe our channel for more interesting videos on test automation.